'Cause baby, now we got bad blood. You know it used to be mad love. So take a look what you've done. 'Cause baby, now we got bad blood. Now we got problems, and I don't think we can solve them. You made a really deep cut, and baby, now we got bad blood. Did you have to do this? I was thinking that you could be trusted. Did you have to ruin what looked shiny? Now it's all rusted. Did you have to hit me where I'm weak? Baby, I couldn't breathe and rub it in so deep. Salt in the wound like you're laughing right at me. Oh, it's so sad to think about the good times you and I. 'Cause baby, now we got bad blood. You know it used to be mad love. So take a look what you've done. 'Cause baby, now we got bad blood. Now we got problems, and I don't think we can solve them. You made a really deep cut, and baby, now we got bad blood. Did you think we'd be fine? Still got scars on my back from your knife, so don't think it's in the past. These kind of wounds, they last and they last. Now did you think it all through? All these things will catch up to you, and time can heal, but this won't. So if you're coming my way, just don't. Oh, it's so sad to think about the good times you and I. 'Cause baby, now we got bad blood. You know it used to be mad love. So take a look what you've done. 'Cause baby, now we got bad blood. Now we got problems, and I don't think we can solve them. You made a really deep cut, and baby, now we got bad blood. Band-aids don't fix bullet holes. You say sorry just for show. You live like that, you live with ghosts. Band-aids don't fix bullet holes. You say sorry just for show. You live like that, you live with ghosts. If you love like that, blood runs cold. So take a look what you've done. 'Cause baby, now we got bad blood. Now we got problems. If we can solve it. 'Cause baby, now we got bad blood. Now we got bad blood. You know it used to be bad love. So take a look what you've done. Now we got bad blood. Problems, and I don't think we can solve them. You made a really deep cut, and baby, now we got bad blood. Hey!
Hey everybody, welcome to Lake Oconee Church. My name is Sharon Casola.
And I'm Andy McQuaid. We're both on staff here, and at least there's no bad blood here.
No, but we are going to be talking more about that. Specifically, what do you do with mean people?
But before we get started, I want to say welcome to those of you who are our guests. I know how difficult it can be to visit someplace new for the first time, especially a church. So thanks for taking that risk and joining us here this morning. I'm really, really thankful that you're here.
Yeah, and to make that thank you come to life, our guest service team has prepared an awesome gift just for you if it's your first time. So stop by the studio on your way out. If you're not sure where that is, that's the glass room you passed on your way in.
And if you're our guest online, you can go to guest.lakeoconee.church, and we'll email you something special that you can use this week as well, just as a way of saying thank you. Well, as we jump into this morning, there's something exciting that we're kicking off today, because today is the start of our back to school supply drive.
Yeah, and many kids right here in the Lake Country don't have the necessary supplies they need to be successful in the school year.
So what we want to do is demonstrate the love of our Heavenly Father in our community by collecting school supplies and stepping in to meet the need of those real tangible needs of both students and teachers heading into this school year.
And that's right, Andy. So as you leave today, you're going to get this card that has a shopping list on the back, and we hope you'll take a minute to pick one up and pick up some of those supplies and bring them back over the next 2 Sundays.
And if you bring them back over the next 2 Sundays, then our volunteer teams will be able to deliver those in advance of school starting to those teachers as they prepare to help those students.
Yeah, so now we're going to hear some awesome songs from Amy, Mel, and the band.
So if you would stand to your feet, say hey to somebody near you, and we'll keep this thing going.
Oh, Jesus, I
searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise and treasures of faith never enough. You came along, you put me back together, and every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing, nothing is better than you. Oh, yeah. See, I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you see them all, and you still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley, and there's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better guys so much for singing with us. I want to invite you to grab your seats.
You know, for some of us, we can sing that song with all of our energy and all of our heart. You, God, there's nothing beside you. We can sing that because that's what we mean, that's what we feel, that's what we believe. But then for others of us, we're not quite there yet. We're still asking questions. We're still exploring faith. And that's why we exist as Lake Oconee Church, to inspire people to follow Jesus, so that each week we each can take a small faith step to discover or even rediscover that we are loved by our Heavenly Father and that He can turn the messiest of our life circumstances into something extraordinarily meaningful. And so I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so glad that you're joining in, whether you can sing that song or not. And if you give towards our mission here, whether you give at give.lakeoconee.church online, or whether you use the buckets that are beside the door, thank you for helping to create that kind of church for you and your family, for our community, and for our kids and our grandkids and the friends that we invite to come and see what God's all about. I'm so grateful for your part in that. Well, in just a minute, we're going to connect with this morning's message. And for those of you who were here last week, we're going to hear a little bit more about Roger. That's why you're here, right? You'll get that as we get into the morning a little bit further. But we're going to hear this message, and around here we have a variety of speakers. Sometimes they're live on our stage, and sometimes they're live from a nearby campus. And we're going to be hearing from Andy Stanley today, and he is from North Point, and he's going to be presenting part 2 of this series entitled Mean People and What to Do About Them. But before we get there, as one of your pastors living here in Georgia's Lake Country, I'd love to take a minute to pray for us. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you that you love us. And God, when we sing, there's nothing better than you. And God, for a lot of us, we believe that deeply, though in moments of our lives, we forget it profoundly. And God, I pray that this song would stick in our minds as we head into this week, that there really is nothing better than you, even in the messes that sometimes surround us. And God, I pray right now for those who are grieving the loss of someone they love. I pray for those who are battling through a circumstance that they wouldn't wish on their worst enemy. God, I pray for those who are struggling with mean people in their family, in their neighborhood, in their lives. God, there's so many moving pieces for us, and yet you remain a constant. And so today we look to you to understand better. How do we mirror your love in a world that's broken? How do we behave in a way that reflects what it means to be a Jesus follower? And God, I pray that for some of us, you would ignite that spark again within us. For others, God, I pray that you might just allow that flame to begin to burn. And God, somehow, I pray that you would move us all forward today, that we would understand you better and live in a way that reflects you accurately. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Now, as some of you know, today we are in part 2 of a series entitled Mean People, and specifically, What to Do About Them. Mean people and what to do about them. And just so you know, I realize that you have been mean. Perhaps somebody is going to hear or watch this message. I hope not, and you'll come to mind. I hope that's not the case. We've all had seasons in our lives when we've been the mean people. And mostly when we get together and open the scripture together and worship together, we're talking about how to live a life in such a way that we're not the mean people. So we usually focus on how to become better people, but in this series, we're talking specifically about how to respond to or what to do about the mean people in our lives. Not just the folks who bug us. We all have people who bug us. Specifically, these are the mean people. These are the people who are deceptive, they're controlling, they're just unkind, they're unpredictable, they're manipulative. To be specific, I'm not talking about somebody who's physically or sexually abusive. That's different, that's illegal. This is just the mean people. And it's important to talk about this, and it's important to think through how we're gonna respond, because if we don't have a plan, if we're not prepared, if we're not proactive, well, you know what happens. What happens to the mean people in our lives? The mean people in our lives, they actually gain a measure of control over our lives. And before we know it, we are being mean right back, even if we don't mean to. In fact, it's almost as if we have no choice, because, and you know this, mean can make you mean. Because mean people keep us off balance. And if somebody walks up to you and pushes you and you're off balance, what do? Well, you have no choice but to compensate. When we're off balance, we're forced to compensate. So when you're around these people, you always feel a little bit off balance. In fact, when you're around these people, other people who know you might even say to you, you know, when you're around him, when you're with her, I notice when you're together, you're not the same person you are everywhere else. You seem to become a different person. It's because that person has kind of thrown you off balance. And obviously, or it seems intuitively, our only choice is to respond in like kind. I told you the first part of the story last week. We have an 80-year-old friend, Sandra and I do, named Alice. And Alice, Sandra became her legal financial power of attorney because we needed to move Alice out of her home into assisted living. And Sandra jumped through all the hoops to become legal power of attorney. And we eventually got Alice moved. But during that process, Alice had invited a friend to move in with her who had fallen on hard times. This guy's in his late 60s, living out of his car. And out of the goodness of her heart, she said, well, you can stay with me a few months until you kind of get yourself together. And we were warned that if he moved in, we would have a hard time getting him out. But when I met this guy, his name's Roger, he seemed like such a nice guy, and he was actually helpful with Alice and helpful with the garage sale. So we eventually get her house cleaned out. Some of you heard this story last time. Get her house cleaned out. We put the house on the market, but he won't move out. And we gave him a deadline. He won't move out. We're showing the house. A real estate agent is showing the house. There's nothing in the house now except Roger's air mattress, some clothes, and his computer. It's a lovely home. Just don't look in there at the guy camping out in the house. He'll be gone. So we're trying to show the house, sell the house so she can get her money. She was living off a pension, Social Security, and there was a little bit of a gap in terms of her monthly expenses with the assisted living. So we really, really wanted to sell her house, put her equity in the bank, and she'd be good to go. But Roger wouldn't move out. And what was our response? Well, our response was pretty much what probably your response would be. We sat around coming up with mean, manipulative ways to get Roger out of Alice's house, because that's just what you do. And after a while, we realized we're becoming like Roger. We're thinking like mean people. In fact, he was so in our heads, and it was like he was living with us in our home. It was all we talked about. He became the focus of our attention. I'd come home every day. What's the latest with Roger? As we got closer and closer and closer this closing, and we were so worried he was going to undermine the closing. In fact, as I shared last time, he actually tried to do it. The point being, it's difficult not to be mean to mean people. It's difficult not to be unkind to people who've been unkind to us. It's difficult to be sensitive to insensitive people. And again, the golden rule is like right out the window, isn't it, when it comes to mean people? Now it's the iron rule. It's the do unto others as they have done unto you, or as they are doing unto you, or even worse, right? But of course, and we talked about this, the problem with getting back at the mean people, or the problem with trying to get even with mean people, is that it actually makes things worse. Because the problem with getting even is that it makes us even with someone we don't really even like. it makes us like someone that we actually dislike. So the question we're asking in this series, and we began, unpacking to answer last time, is what do we do? I mean, you can't just ignore these people. That actually empowers them. And eventually you're going to break, right? Eventually you're going to break, you're going to act like them, or worse, which actually gives them more power over you. In fact, we have all been there. Some of our greatest regrets, perhaps, are how we responded or how we reacted to the people who threw us off balance, the mean people in our lives. So there's actually a third option. You don't have to ignore them. You don't have to become like them. There's a third option that actually takes away some of their power. It actually positions us to keep our frustration from overflowing into other relationships around us. Maybe you grew up in a family where your mom was angry, your father was angry, and as you got older, you realized they're not really angry with me. They're angry with their father, their mother. They're angry with somebody else. They're angry with life, but their anger just overflowed and how they parented. And this third option protects us from falling into that trap as well. Jesus taught it, of course, and Jesus modeled it. In fact, he was the ultimate model, but Abigail modeled it as well. And Abigail is a character in the Old Testament that many people don't know about, and she's part of sort of the backstory of the story of David. Most of us are familiar with King David if you grew up in church. Maybe you know the story of shepherd boy David. But this story takes place in the season of his life where he is fugitive David. When he was a teenager, as most of us know, he marched down into the valley of Elah. He killed Goliath with a slingshot. In that moment, he became a national hero. So King Saul, the king of Israel, brought him in close, actually made him part of his family because he was a national hero and he was a leader and he had influence. And King Saul was smart enough to know you keep your enemies, you keep your friends close and you keep your enemies close as well. And David, he realized, was a bit of a threat to his power and his influence in Israel. And then he gets word that a rogue prophet had actually gone to David's house when he was a little boy and anointed him as the next king of Israel. And if you are the current king, of course, that's a problem because you want your son to become the next king. So now David is a threat to Saul's dynasty. So he tries to kill David. He eventually banishes him. David becomes a fugitive. He gathers other fugitives around him. Before long, he's got about 600 men, their wives, their girlfriends, their kids kind of traipsing along behind him. He's got a small army, but he's a fugitive from the law. And he's angry. He's angry with King Saul, and he's angry with the circumstances. But he can't get to Saul. So he just kind of carries this seething anger everywhere he goes. And that's what brings us to the story. And this is where we meet Abigail. So I'm going to catch you up a little bit with the story, and then we'll continue from there. Here's how the story begins. 1 Samuel chapter 25. Samuel was essentially David's biographer. A certain man in Moan who had property there in Carmel was very wealthy. He had 1,000 goats and 3,000 sheep, which he was shearing in Carmel, and his name was Nabal. Now, during sheep shearing season, men and families who had a lot of sheep discovered just how much wealthier they had become. This was like payday. This was an annual financial report. His name was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail. And she was an intelligent and beautiful woman, but her husband was harsh and mean, there's our word, in his dealings. So David and his men hear about the fact that Nabal is having sheep shearing in Carmel and realizes Nabal is about to become even wealthier. So David sends 10 of his men to Carmel to meet with Nabal to say, hey, would you be willing to share some of your wealth and some of your extra wealth, some of your extra with me and my men? And why would David feel like he could make that request? Well, that's what the message to Nabal, that's the message from David's men to Nabal explains that. Here's what they said. They said, Nabal, when your shepherds were with us out in the fields for months and months and months, when your shepherds were with us, we did not mistreat them. And the whole time they were at Carmel, nothing of theirs was missing. In other words, our men could have taken whatever they wanted to take. We could have taken women, we could have taken sheep, we could have mistreated your shepherds, but instead, you can talk to them, nothing went missing. In other words, your profit is due in part to our protection. So this seemed kind of reasonable. Hey, would you share with us your profits because, your profits are due in part to our protection. Nabal's response, he was rude. He said this, to David's messengers, who is this David? Now, he knew who he was. Who is this David? Who is this son of Jesse? who's broken away from the king. He's just a bandit. He's a fugitive. He's a nobody. He's an outlaw. I did not ask for his help. I didn't need his help, and I don't owe him anything. And you can go back and tell him that. So David's men, they turned around and they went back, and when they arrived, they reported every word. And if you were with us last time, you'll remember David's response. David said to his men, each of you, strap on your sword. So they did, and David strapped his on as well. And about 400 men went up with David. They were headed out of the mountains to Carmel. Now this 400 men, this was an overreaction, as we said, of epic proportion. This was going to be a massacre. And as he rides along, he does what many of us have done many, many times. As he rides along, he kind of builds up a head of steam. He begins justifying to himself what he wasn't 100% sure he should be doing. It's been useless, he mutters to himself. It's been useless, all my watching over this fellow's property in the wilderness so that nothing of his was missing. And what has he done? How has he responded to me? He has paid me back evil for good. And then God, David evokes God's name and invites God into the equation. May God deal with me, he says. May God deal with me. May God deal with David, be it ever so severely, if by morning I leave alive one male of all who belong to him. I'm going to kill his servants, his friends, his sons, and then I'm going to kill him. Now, again, you read this story and you're like, okay, so David, he didn't share with you. Is this what you do? Well, if we know anything, or if you know anything about David's history, this is what he did. So he's riding along, he's hurt, he's angry, he's powering up. It's going to be evil for evil. He's really channeling, I think, his frustration with King Saul. But King Saul is untouchable. But he's found somebody he can take his anger out on. And that's pretty much where we left off last time with the story. So we'll continue from there. Meanwhile, back in Carmel, here's what happened. One of the servants, Nabal's servants, told Abigail, Nabal's wife, David sent messengers. You weren't here, we find out later. You weren't here, but let me tell you what happened. David sent messengers from the wilderness to give our master his greetings, but our master hurled insults at them. Yet, Abigail, these men, David's men, these men were so good to us. They did not mistreat us the whole time we were out in the fields near them. Nothing went missing, night and day. They were like a wall around us. They protected us the whole time we were herding our sheep near them. And then she says, Abigail, think it over. I want you to think it over and see what you can do, because disaster is hanging over our master and his whole household. And then I think she leans in. She doesn't say this very loud. She whispers in Abigail's ear, he is such a wicked man. He's such a wicked man that nobody can talk to him. So Abigail acted quickly. And here's what she does. It's kind of interesting. She assembles a caravan of food donkeys. Okay, you're familiar with food trucks? Okay, food donkeys, a caravan of food donkeys. She gets all these donkeys, ties them together, and then she loads them up with food. Food donkeys. There were hundreds of loaves of bread, figs, cakes, wine. She just loads them up. She knows she has about 400 male mouths to feed. And then she told her servant, this was so smart. She said to her servants, you go on ahead, you head out toward the plain. I'll follow you. But she did not tell her husband, Nabal, what she was up to. Meanwhile, coming down out of the mountains, here comes David and his 400 men armed for battle, and he's just mumbling to himself, building up this head of steam, building up justification for what he's about to do. And as he comes out of this ravine, the text tells us, he comes out of this ravine onto this big wide open plain. And what does he see? A caravan of food donkeys. And in the front is this beautiful woman. And it totally messes up his mood. Have you ever had that happen? Like you've got your speech perfectly planned and you've kind of built up a head of steam and you're going to go home or you're going to walk down the office to the other office. You got it all worked out. And then somebody apologizes or somebody does something so nice for you. It's like, how, I was so mad. I was perfectly mad. I was perfectly mad to deliver this message. So here comes David. I mean, he's spent all this time. He's got these guys. And here's the food caravan ruins his mood. You just can't stay mad with that going on. So here's what the text says. When Abigail saw David, she quickly got off her donkey and she bowed down before David with her face to the ground. And this is so powerful. She begins to speak to David. She begins to speak to David as if he is already the man that she hopes he will become. Now, ladies, you should take note of this. This will work on us even when we know what you're up to. It just works. You know, honey, you are so patient with the kids. I am. Yes, you are so. It's like a Jedi mind trick. You are so patient with our son and with our daughter. Honey, you are such a good planner. I can't wait to see what you've planned for my birthday. You're such a good planner. It's like, I am, you know. Anyway, here's what she does. It's so powerful. She fell at his feet and she said, pardon your servant, my Lord, and let me speak to you. In other words, just give me a minute. And please hear what your servant has to say. Please, she says, pay no attention to my husband, my Lord, that wicked man Nabal. He is just like his name. His name means fool, and folly goes with him. So you're not wrong about my husband, okay? And as for me, your servant, I wasn't there when your 10 men showed up and made the request. If I'd been there, I may have been able to influence my husband. I wasn't there. This wasn't my fault. Referring to the 10 men that David had sent ahead of time. Then here she goes. This is so powerful. Here's what she says. And now, my Lord, as surely as the Lord your God lives, and as you live, since the Lord has kept you from bloodshed, since the Lord has kept you from avenging yourself with your own hands. And David's like, he did? She's like, yes, he did. In other words, David, you're not the type of person that would avenge yourself on a defenseless person, are you? Well, I guess I'm not. And then she gives him credit, again, for being even better than he was about to be. She continues. And let this gift, which your servant has brought to my Lord, be given to the men who follow you. Again, this just completely ruins his plans. I mean, how do you justify slaughter and pillage when somebody is bringing you what you were going to steal? The Lord your God will certainly make a lasting dynasty for my Lord, because you fight the Lord's battles. He's like, I do? Yes, you do. You fight the Lord's battles. You don't have to fight your own battles, David. And no wrongdoing will be found in you as long as you live. It won't? No, it won't. Even though, and then she refers to King Saul, because everybody knew the story. Everybody knew the background of why David was a fugitive. Even though someone is pursuing you to take your life, the life of my Lord will be, she uses some interesting Hebrew imagery. The life of my Lord will be bound securely in the bundle of the living by the Lord your God, which is like, what? Here's basically what she's saying. Even though someone is trying to steal your life is tucked away securely and safely in God's wallet. Your life is hidden in the bottom of a lady's large purse. It's safe. No one will ever be able to find it. Then, this is my favorite part. Then she takes him back to 15-year-old David, his 15-year-old self, when he faced Goliath. In fact, perhaps, as we talked about last time, David's sword was Goliath's sword. He had actually taken it from a priest earlier, just a few chapters earlier. Perhaps she saw Goliath's sword strapped to his back or strapped across the back of his mule. Maybe that's what gave her this idea. Here's what she says. This is so great, but the lives of your enemies, God, will hurl away as from the pocket of a sling. David, remember God's past faithfulness. Remember when you walked down into the valley of Elah to face Goliath, you weren't a warrior. You weren't equipped for battle. You didn't have a sword. You just did what you felt like God wanted you to do. And do you remember how God came to your rescue? Do you remember how God defended you? Remember those days. David, you don't need to get even. You have no need to return evil. For the Lord, your God, is with you. And then she speaks to his future. And essentially, she asked the question that we ask all the time around here. She asked the question without asking it directly. Essentially, this next part, she says, David, what story do you want to tell when this is nothing but a story that you tell? Years from now, when you're looking back on this season of your life as a fugitive, because one day you're going to be the king. God's going to keep his promise to you. But when you look back on this season, what story do you want to tell? Here's her version. When the Lord has fulfilled for my Lord every good thing he promised concerning him and has appointed him ruler or king over Israel, my Lord, this is so great, my Lord will not have on his conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed or of having avenged himself. David, isn't this the better story? Don't you want to look back on this season and realize that you stepped back instead of taking matters into your own hand? And of course, David comes to his senses. He's about to act like somebody he doesn't even like. And David said to Abigail, praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you today to meet me. May you be blessed for your good judgment. In other words, you had good judgment, I didn't. I'm thanking God for your good judgment, and I'm so grateful it intersected with the decision I was about to make, for keeping me from bloodshed this day and from avenging myself with my own hands. I have heard your words, and I'm granting you your request. Now, at some point, we all need an Abigail in our lives, don't we? We all need somebody who can talk us down. We all need somebody who has access to us. We all need somebody who feels permission to delve into those areas of our lives that we oftentimes just keep people away from. We all need an Abigail. And when she shows up, or when he shows up in our lives, we should be wise enough to listen. In fact, some of us, if we're honest, one of our greatest regrets could have been avoided if we had listened to the Abigail in our life. Somebody did say something, maybe a parent, maybe a friend, maybe somebody you work with, somebody you date. They did say something, but you just wouldn't listen. We need to listen to those people who speak to our preferred future, who remind us that what we want immediately sometimes isn't going to get in the way of what we want ultimately. That what feels right now may haunt us later. And I was tempted to skip the rest of the story because it's a little bit storybook, but hey, this is how the story ends, and this is how things went down back then. When Abigail went to Nabal, he was in the house holding a banquet like that of a king, because he's got all this extra wealth, all this extra. He was in high spirits, he's so happy, and very drunk. And so she told him nothing at all until daybreak. So she doesn't go back and say, you really owe me big time, because she just waits. Then in the morning, when Nabal was sober, his wife told him everything that had happened. And his heart failed him when he realized how close he came to being executed and losing everything he had. And he became like a stone. And then about 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal and he died. And then the storybook ending. Then David sent word to Abigail asking her to become his wife. It's like, really? Yeah, this is just how things happened back then. And what do you think she did? Abigail quickly got on a donkey and, attended by her 5 female servants, went with David's messengers and became his wife. And of course, they lived happily ever after. The end. So, yeah, I made that part up. Okay, so here's what we have, and this is where this begins to interface with all of our lives, either now or in the future. 3 characters, 3 different responses, but only one hero. Nabal, David, and Abigail. Nabal was evil for good. David, evil for evil. And Abigail, good for evil. Nabal was pretty much maniacal. David was predictable. Abigail was remarkable. And those essentially are our choices. Every time we interface with or think about interfacing with the mean people in our lives. And if you're not a Christian or you're not a Jesus follower, you get to choose. And I think, common sense would probably cause you to lean more in one direction than the other, but ultimately you get to choose. You're the captain of your own ship. But for those of us who claim to be Jesus followers, I don't mean just Christians. You prayed a prayer when you were 8 years old and became a Christian. I mean, you get up every day and your intent is to follow Jesus. We really only have one option, and it's the remarkable option. And the reason our only option is the remarkable option is because we have been on the receiving end of remarkable, and we have been called to model it. We don't call it Abigail. What do we call it? We call it amazing grace. David had amazing Abigail. We have amazing grace. And here's why we call it amazing grace, because while you were still a sinner, and when I was still a sinner, before we had ever done anything good, when the only thing about us was the fact that we would fall so short of God's glory and God's standards, while we were still sinners, Christ did something good for us. Christ died for us. And then Jesus says, since I've died for you and since you claim to be my follower, I want you to actually follow me. Not just believe in me and not just believe things about you. I want you to get up every single day and follow me. To which you may be tempted to say, well, what does that look like? And Jesus says, okay, basically it looks like just doing for others what I've done for you. I want you to love your enemies. To which we say, you mean tolerate and ignore? He says, no, I mean love. Love isn't I want you to, and here's his words. I want you to do good to those who hate you. It's not enough to tolerate. It's not enough to ignore. It's not enough to just try to keep our balance and stay away. He said, I want you to figure out a way to do something good for those that you would consider an enemy. And we think, but I thought I was doing good just not to hurt her or hurt him or let the air out of their tires or, let the air out of the air mattress and put it out on the street with all of his stuff and change the locks. I mean, I thought I was doing pretty good not to do that. He says, no, I want you to go further. I want you to bless those who curse you. Now, again, you're hearing this through the filter of your current circumstances, or if you're a parent, I mean, there's a story that one day I'll be able to tell that I'm not at liberty to tell yet about one of my kids who walked through the valley of the shadow of death as it relates to this very dynamic. And when you watch your kids being mistreated by other kids or by the parents of other kids, the whole idea of doing good to those who've done evil to you or blessing those who curse you, or Jesus says, oh yeah, by the way, at night I want you to pray for those who mistreat you, to which I think most of us, if we're honest, we'd say, okay, I don't really even pray for the people who are good to me. I don't even have time. I don't even take the time to pray for them. And you want me to add the people who mistreat me to my list of people I pray for? Jesus says, yeah. In other words, I don't want you to do something to them. If you're going to follow me, that means you have to do for them what I've done for you. I want you to figure out how to do something for them. Because that's how you keep from becoming like them. But there's a bonus. Jesus says, when we do this, not only do we not become like them, we become like our Father in heaven. Because he, Jesus' words, is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. So, got some mean people in your life? You don't have to commit to anything. I just want you to think for a minute. What would it look like? What would it look like in that particular set of circumstances, in your particular set of circumstances? What would it look like to return good for evil? Back to our story for just a minute. As things escalated, Roger threatened to sue our real estate agent, threatened to sue us. I mean, just escalated. And about 6 days out from closing, and we're hoping that we don't lose this closing. Alice needs the money. Sandra has worked so hard to get this whole giant project to the finish line. I am so angry. I am so taking up her offense. I so just want to take matters into my own hands. And she's like, Andy, you cannot get involved. I'm like, this is not intuitive for me to let you, be the point of the spear on this particular event. I would like to be the whole spear, honestly. But anyway, we've talked about that. So anyway, as things escalate, about 6 days out, I walk into the kitchen one morning. She's been baking. She has her cookie sheets out, and they're full of muffins. And on the kitchen counter, there's a styrofoam plate or a paper plate with 6 muffins that are wrapped in cellophane. Clearly, she's planning to take these to someone. And she does this kind of thing all the time. She bakes, and she just takes people food. So I walk in and sit down, and I say, who are these for? She looks at me, and she says, they're for Roger. I'm like, what? Roger, now, little backstory, when they were doing the garage sale at Alice's house, Roger actually helped. He bought some things, which was so odd that he bought things from the garage sale that said that we were manipulating her and forcing her out of her house. I'm like, you bought stuff from her? I won't even go there. Okay, so I'm like, so at the garage sale, she brought these muffins. She brought 2 different kinds. And he liked one in particular and commented on, oh, these are the best muffins I've ever eaten. So now she's gotten up and she has baked Roger muffins. I'm like, what? And then she looked at me and she said this. She said, I have to do this for me. I have to do this for me. I have to do something for him so he doesn't continue to get to me. I have to do something for him. So she went out in the garage, got on her donkey, and rode to Lawrenceville and took the muffins to Roger. Now, she was hoping, her plan was to just leave them out on his car and then just text him and say, hey, I left you a treat. When she got there, he was outside getting in his car about to go somewhere. And they had a very awkward conversation. And she gave him the muffins. And she came home. And she was free. And then about 4 days before the closing, after more threats, in fact, the day he finally left, it escalated. Then he finally gave up. Then he said, I need a little grace. And we're like, what? Anyway, I wasn't there because I wasn't allowed to be a part of this. So about 4 days before the closing, he finally took his few things and packed up his car and he left. The point simply being this. We can't control the mean people in our lives. We can't control what happens to them or how they respond to us, but we can determine how we treat and respond to them. And Jesus, this isn't bonus points. This isn't like, wow, you're such a great Christian. This is kind of at the epicenter. This is central. This is kind of 101 that we have been invited to write not a predictable story, but a remarkable story. We've been invited to do precisely for others what they don't deserve for us to do. And it probably won't change anything about them or in them, but it will certainly do something for you. And when you do for them what they would not do for you, wouldn't dream of doing for you, when you do for them precisely what they don't deserve for you to do for them, when you do that, Jesus says, you're like your Father in heaven. Do good to those who hate you. Pray for those who persecute you. And when you do, you'll be free. And you'll be like your Father in heaven. And you'll know in that moment that you're not just a believer. You're not just a Christian. You're actually literally following Jesus. Now, last time I left you with these 4 questions, I want to leave them with you again. These will be on all of our social media sites. Do you want to be even with someone you don't even like? Wouldn't you rather be ahead? And we talked about the fact it's not intuitive, but the way you get ahead is by refusing to get even. What story do you want to tell? And then this is where some of us need to camp out. What would it look like? You don't have to commit to it. Just consider it. What would it look like in your particular set of circumstances? As awkward as it might be, as strange as it might be, what would it look like to return good for evil? You owe it to yourself, especially as a Jesus follower, you owe it to yourself to at least explore the answer to that question. You don't have to follow through necessarily, but at least ask and answer the question. Because we have been called to not simply believe things, but to follow Jesus. I'd love to pray for us. Heavenly Father, it is so much easier to stand up here and talk about it than to come off the stage, take off the microphone, walk back into the real world and do it. But this is what you did for us. This is why we placed our faith in you. This is why we sing what we sing. This is why we worship who we worship. This is why we attempt to raise our kids the way we're attempting to raise our children and live our lives out loud. So, Father, wherever this lands with us personally, would you give us the wisdom to know what to do? Would you give us the courage to do it? And Father, for those of us who are parents, and who are watching our children navigate similar circumstances, would you give us the wisdom to know how to help them and prepare them to follow you at a young age when it means doing something that is so opposite of what they feel like doing, so that we would be known, not simply as believers, but as followers. And I pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
We have a chance to be remarkable, to write a remarkable story, and truly to impact the way that others understand what Jesus is all about. But it comes down to what we do about the mean people in our lives. I hope that you'll give thought to how that applies in particular to the person that you could not get out of your mind during this conversation as we've been going through this over the last 2 weeks, and put that into practice over the next couple of weeks. And if you're our guest today, don't forget to swing by the studio and pick up your gift that we mentioned earlier. I'd love for you to take that with you as you go. It's actually something cool, so I think you would enjoy using it this week. So swing by and grab that from the studio, the glass room, as you head out the door. And I want to invite all of us back here next Sunday as I'll be launching a brand new series, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. And until then, we'll see you next Sunday. Bye-bye.